Trying to do this without a script, so here we go. Hype filter. Cycling has a real in-group problem. And what I mean by that is cycling is a series of nested in-groups. And I don't think that most people close to the world of cycling really recognize how deep that problem runs. And we see the consequences of that problem when we look at things like doping allegations when they come up, and when we see the reactions from career cyclists, high-level cyclists. We see this overwhelming response that looks like it's a denial, that looks like it's sort of a washing away of what really is out there. And cyclists, elite cyclists, seem to not see the same problems or the same issues that the common spectator might see. They have a tendency to see them in a different way. And we need to talk about this sort of nested in grouping, I feel, to kind of get anywhere with the whole sport of cycling. So, if you're around cycling for any time at all, you notice that there are different disciplines. They form an in-group. There are different geographic areas inside of those disciplines, and those people have a tendency to form an in-group. Then you have the style of bike that people ride, and that forms another in-group. Then you have the subsects of that, and those form other in-groups. Geography forms in-groups. I've never seen another sport that I've been involved in, not national level archery, not national level soccer, not state or regional running. Nothing else that I've been involved with has the level of complexity with its in-groups and its social structure that cycling has. So it's not uncommon for you to find a podcast with one elite rider talking with other elite riders about a very specific issue that may or may not affect just that group. Their perspective on other issues, adjacent issues, they're often blind to those issues. So if you talk about what the good aspects of a bike are, let's look at gravel riding. You'll get a lot of aero talk. You'll get a lot of lightweight, big wheels, the things that matter for the performance for the 40 kph club, the 25 mile per hour club, if they're out there in gravel. I haven't seen a legitimate gravel race finish with that high of an average speed, so I often wonder where we are with that. So I don't know. But there's a very isolated feel of what people have going on. And I don't want to use terms like echo chamber, because I feel like those are, they're divisive in and of themselves. I don't think that they're helpful. I think that what we have is, I think it develops naturally. I think it develops by the phenomenon in cycling that you often end up riding with people of the same ability category. Because the sport takes such a long time for you to train in and to develop in. So there's always been a categorization of A groups, B groups, C group rides. And that's kind of where it starts. Then you start to hear the things that affect just that group. So you start to lose a reference point for who else and what else might be relevant. And you start to focus inward. Now, the problem comes when that inward focus is so deep that you start excluding other groups from whatever the aspect is, social aspects or riding aspects, whatever they are. Sort of the whole party pace crowd versus the lycra crowd. So in-group term party pace, out-group term mammal. Middle-aged male in lycra. So that's kind of like the dialectic that's set up in some circles, just to give you an example. Another one is inside of the world of gravel. You have thousands of participants at Unbound who all pay their way to be there and participate in what is probably the longest most challenging, grueling event that they're going to do in their lives. And they pay their fees and they come and they suffer. And they're called age groupers. And this term is catching on even with the announcers. And let's get to the announcers. The announcers are often just people from the inside circle, or in the case of the Holy Spirit of Gravel, you've got a near insider who's allowed to come into the circle and do some announcing. So you're starting to see a little bit of a different perspective there. That's until that perspective gets co-opted, and we'll see what happens. So you've got that going on where the in-group is formed by way of trauma, by way of exclusion themselves. So they are excluded from one circle, so they create another circle. That circle then divvies itself up even more so. So the loss of the idea that the age groupers make up the preponderance of entrance into an event like Unbound or Leadville, and overwhelmingly pay for the prizes that the elite riders, get to compete for. So, not to take anything away from the elite riders, they're definitely athletically gifted and deserving of a chance to compete at that level. That's not it. But the disrespect that can be seen in the terms of age groupers seems to be overlooked. That's compounded by an exclusion of any of those perspectives in any talks that they have, in any performance talks. Because if you're not performing at the top, you're not performing at all. This seems to be the attitude. Then that creates the other out group, which are the party pacers or the steel bike crowd. Some of them who have been and are capable of fantastic rides, if you want to go on a speed basis, on their own speed and endurance basis, and are fantastic athletes themselves. But they have hunkered down into that camp, and that creates yet another exclusionary boundary. Now, being a cyclist who looks like me, and having been in the cycling world for 40 plus years, different competitions on and off and everything, being around things, I am not in anybody's in-group dynamic or demographic. Therefore, I am equally excluded in all circles until I hang around enough, and then included enough that I can be forgotten. So the outsider who becomes like lawn furniture is what it becomes like. So then you get to see things that other people don't see. So you're there for so long, it's taken for granted that you're not consequential because you don't know the people from the group that those people are inside of. So you don't talk to them, so you won't have any negative impact on them. You don't say things to them. You don't interact with them. Therefore, it's okay to give you a little glimpse behind the curtain every once in a while. And I don't think it's intentional, but I think it's just because they let their guard down, or they feel comfortable enough and say something and know that you can't hurt them. So, Olympic Training Center, 7-Eleven Velodrome, early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, go down to start participating in track riding, velodrome racing. Always wanted to do that. Probably had some natural gifts in that area, or at least some propensities, so I wanted to explore that. Go down to the velodrome one season, and it goes okay. Get advanced to category 3, do my thing, start doing some of the regional events. I even get a locker in the velodrome. So once you get a locker there, you're kind of on the inside. Start taking a ride down with some of the guys from the Denver area, and you start to see things. A bag being handed off. What's clearly a needle in the bag being handed off. You start to correlate performances of different individuals with some of these activities that you see. You start to see clusters of high-performing athletes interacting with each other and absolutely having quiet conversations on the side. You get to see that kind of stuff. Okay, that's great, but it exists. So if I were in my in-group and I were a cyclist in a clean in-group, I could report with clear conscience that I hadn't seen anything like that. I don't know that there's doping in cycling, blah, 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 blah. Well, the 3, 4, 5, 10 people that you interact with, that might be true. And the 2 or 3 that might be doing something suspect are going to go damn well out of their way to maintain the clear appearance when they're around that in-group. There might even be in-groups that play that game with each other. So you have a whole lot going on there. Point being is that when you have a sport that is so divided, you have velodrome racing, mountain biking, gravel, road, fixed gear, single speed, all of these subgenres start to create this very fractured landscape. And getting to the truth about doping, whatever that might be, Dylan Johnson statistically pointed out it's probably about 25-28%. Well, if you take that as a random number and you take the first 11 finishers of the Tour de France, what does that mean statistically? And then the blind eye that people have to turn, well, it doesn't apply to them statistically. That's overwhelmingly amateur athletes. That's what you can take away from Dylan Johnson's video. That might just be like, all these amateur cyclists are really the ones who are doping because they're not held to doping protocols. They're not held to doping tests. Well, there is no evidence that I can see in my research that shows that the doping protocols have kept up with the potential doping methods out there. Even more so, there are no published papers from WADA or any of the doping agencies that indicate what they're doing to detect and combat new agents. Don't see that anywhere. That's something that needs to be done. Those agents are being developed in conjunction with pharmaceutical companies for legitimate purposes. They are being funneled into all kinds of other things. The secondary uses, off-label uses, as it's called. They're out there. Now, cast dispersions on anyone? No. Let's not do that right now. Let's just go with the statistical analysis and keep it in our heads that about 25% of athletes are engaged in doping. Nothing wrong with that, right? We can accept that fact. Now, if your circle claims to be clean and free and that you've never heard of this and that this is all new to you and you don't know anybody who does this, then you're participating in the other problem with cycling. And that is the problem of exclusion. Why don't you know more people? Why don't you know more types of people in cycling? Well, I get it. Yeah, cycling's a very, very selfish sport with the amount of time that it takes to train, the amount of time it takes to recover at even a modest amateur level, at even a modest masters racer amateur level. I get it. I understand that. But maybe we would know more if we knew more people in cycling. Maybe it's a good thing to know more different types of people. Just saying, I don't know. But it seems like that's part of the problem.